As a PA or an NP, do you ever feel like that you're just kind of limited, that there's not much that you can do other than working as a clinician or maybe teaching? Well, if that's you, then let me assure you that there are a ton of other things that we can do beyond those two opportunities. Hi, my name is Michelle. This is my channel, The Medicine Couch. And on this channel, I interview PAs and NPs doing all kinds of things in and around medicine. Today is no exception. I am joined by a PA who does medical legal consulting, and he's going to tell us about the vast opportunities and all of the different ways that you can work in medical legal consulting.
Hi there, Chris Cannell. I am a PA of the last 22 years. I have my doctorate degree from University of Lynchburg in 2022. I've been practicing clinically in emergency medicine ultimately since 2005. And then I've also been moonlighting in critical care, hospitalist medicine, orthopedic surgery, urgent care.
Yeah, I love that about PAs because I think it really makes us unique that we often work in different specialties and so you learn and pull things from different areas.
Absolutely. I think we are just so flexible in what we do. And I think we need to embrace that concept.
Today, we're going to not be talking about the specialty you work in. We're actually going to talk about what kind of work you do on the side, which I think is going to be a growing field or a growing area, I should say, for PAs and NPs as well, because as we talk about this, we're both PAs, but this is something NPs can also do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have always been sort of have this entrepreneur spirit. I work 312s and I have some time, some days of the week to work. And I was approached in 2017 to be an expert witness. I unfortunately was part of a malpractice lawsuit at one point, which thankfully I came out on top of. And they thought I was a great expert and they thought I presented myself quite professionally. And I really enjoyed working with the firm. Really learned a lot from the attorneys. I'd always had an interest in law. And in 2007, I did my first case and it sort of blossomed from there. And so since that point in time, I've really advanced my education in healthcare law through my doctorate degree. And then just recently got my certification as a medical professional legal consultant and just really have done a ton of cases throughout, both for the plaintiffs and defense side.
When you say medical legal consulting, can you kind of just give us an idea of the different areas where you can be a medical legal consultant as a PA or an NP?
There's the ways that people sort of think are the traditional ways, which is being an expert witness to work with whatever specialty you work in. So emergency medicine, orthopedic surgery, urgent care, occupational health, IR, etc. That's a traditional pathway or traditional side hustle work that you do. You see a lot of physicians do it, physical therapists, etc.
That can be for the defense or the prosecution, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So for the plaintiff side and for the defense side, there are multiple opportunities. And I think some people think that I don't want to work with the dark side, which is the plaintiff side, which is not true. I think people need to not look at it that way. That you're not on a side. Your job is to look at the standard of care and review the standard of care, and you're neutral. You are only focusing on that. Although you're sort of getting compensated by that particular team, you're not on a side. You're just a fact witness. And so that's how I view it. And I think it's very important when you do this work that you really get like a 50 to 50% mix of both plaintiffs and defense, because it really shows that you're neutral, that you're not a quote unquote a hired gun. You're making medicine better. You are creating a safety net within the system and improving healthcare quality. And
Yes.
that's how people need to look at it. It's not that you are going against the colleague. You're not. You're strictly looking and upholding the standard of care. We need to have checks and balances in the system. And the perspective maybe not is that to the public, but really that's what it is. I mean, I work with so many professional attorneys, and they're not money hungry people. That they're just doing what their jobs are, and protecting patients. And I think that's
Yeah.
how it needs to be looked at.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Anyway, so go on after the testifying.
There's so many different areas. You can work in-house as a sort of like an in-house expert, almost like a legal nurse consultant, at a higher level because of sort of our training and education. You can do consulting work on that side and work as an in-house expert. You can work in risk management side of things for a healthcare system, for a med tech company, for a pharmaceutical company, in an in-house role and a regulatory role. You can work in medical affairs for both a hospital system or a pharmaceutical system, a health tech system. You can work for a malpractice insurance company. You can work for a quality and safety side of things. There are roles in government where you can work as an investigator with the Department of Justice. So there's many different opportunities that are not just working as an independent consultant.
I think it's interesting that our nurse colleagues, not nurse practitioners, but just nurses in general, have done a great job over the course of the profession to find these kind of niches and to branch out and do other things. And I know sometimes it really frustrates us because they seem to have a good stronghold on those things. But I think that we should look at it as a roadmap kind of for us and
Right.
understand that if there's a nurse doing a job or something that sounds interesting to you, there's often an opportunity for PAs to do it. And when I did that other interview with Susan Ferrero, the PA who's doing medical legal consultant, we were talking about how PAs and NPs also kind of just fit this special niche because we can look at cases from a different point of view than a nurse can. Then, when they need to know standard of care, we're clinicians that we can speak to that, but yet we're not as expensive as the physicians would be. And so we actually can kind of be that sweet spot for medical legal consulting.
Yeah. So working as a consultant, specifically as an independent contractor, this is a fairly well compensated role. And there's definitely some ranges. We're definitely below that of physicians. We're definitely above that of nurses. And I've seen those numbers really starting to get closer to the physician compensation
Mhm.
range. It all depends. I'm on a member of multiple different Facebook page links, and I have that's really the best way for which I get access to this information. We sort of bounce ideas off of one another, and there's mutual respect. I mean, there's physical therapists on there, there's occupational therapists, speech therapists, but there's mutual respect for one another in those areas. And I think there's tends to be a lot of negative vitriol on some social media sites about physicians and PAs and NPs, but I don't experience any of that in the expert witness world. There are different areas where you can get access to that type of information. We are able to provide some guidance through our work with APALM. But there are certain ways that you can address that based upon your years of experience in that particular specialty, et cetera.
And you hit on APALM, and people may not know what that is. Tell us what APALM is.
APALM is the Academy of Physician Associates in Legal Medicine. It's a constituent organization of the AAPA. It's been around, I think, since 2004, 2005. We're really trying to focus our work on creating opportunities more in this space for PAs. And we're welcome to all members. Like, I've recently reached out to a legal nurse consultant group, and we're going to really start working with them because we really want to expand our areas for PAs. But we have attorneys, law practices, malpractice insurance companies that can be members. So we're open to everybody. But the goal right now, especially with the compact agreements coming into place and OTP and increased autonomy for PAs out there, is we want to increase education. We don't want malpractice rates to go up. And with increased exposure, there's increased risk. And in that situation, we want to be the subject matter experts in education for all PA schools out there.
So is if somebody's a member of APALM, like what kind of things, it sounds like you're building a community, but what kind of things would do you envision being available either now or in the future?
So we envision that we really want to work with PA programs across the country to serve as the subject matter expert and lecturers for documentation, for communication, for medical ethics, and that all really surrounds healthcare law. And the resources that are offered to memberships, attorneys reach out to APOM for looking for experts. And so for a very low membership fee, you get access to attorneys searching for experts. And,
Yeah.
again, this side hustle, it pays much better than clinical work. And so
Yeah.
that's a great opportunity for folks. And then there's education. We put on a CME event last night talking about vicarious liability, different types of malpractice insurance. We did a bunch of cases, and really our work at APOM transcends all constituent organizations, transcends all, because it's applicable to everything we do as PAs. And I think sometimes it's the forgotten area that people say, "Oh, I'm protected with malpractice insurance," but people don't tend to care until they get a case. And I can tell you, going through a case, it's one of the worst things you can ever go through in your life. And so it's very, very important that we educate ourselves and protect ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. And so if people are kind of interested in going into the medical legal area, and they may be like, I don't even know where to start. I mean, obviously an APALM membership, it sounds like they're going to have access to, some CME and different ways to learn, and a community to help them learn. But what other ways can people learn about being a medical legal consultant, or learn more about the applicable parts of the law? Because you don't have to know like all of the law,
Right.
right?
Yeah, I think that's what makes this such an awesome side hustle, is that if you have enough experience within a certain specialty, you can be an expert witness, and you don't really need a lot of training. I didn't,
Oh,
because you have just awesome attorneys who just guide you along the process. You have knowledge that they don't, and they're looking for that
right.
knowledge, and they will guide you along that process because they need you. And so so that's just one way to learn from that perspective. And then certainly doing additional training, such as what I've done with my DMSc degree. There's a ton of healthcare law training there, but there's also
Mhm.
numerous opportunities. There's different types of organization. Seek expert witness is one. There's different physician groups that do different types of training. I just went through a 6-week program through the Legal Studies Institute and got my certification. And that really tremendously augmented my pre-existing knowledge. And also I gained a ton more knowledge in that space. And there's different types of degrees as well. You can get a master's in healthcare law. And then certainly you had interviewed Peter Burge, who was a PA and then became an attorney. And then there's tremendous education on social media, through your own workspace, your healthcare systems. There's always training that you can do that's available to you, most of the time free, to sort of better educate you on healthcare law.
I think sometimes people who are a little burnt out and want to get out of being doing direct clinical care, or at least reduce it, think that they have to go back to school for years and spend tons of money to get there, when this is an opportunity that, like you said, people can step into with just their general medical knowledge that they've racked up over the years. And then they can augment it as they choose, but definitely not necessary to do that. So I think that's really cool, and why this is such a great opportunity. And one thing that I think that we need to talk about too, when we were talking about the differences between like being a medical expert witnessing, on the stand, versus somebody working as a consultant with a law firm, is the requirements for practice in that. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Each state has its different rules and regulations with respect to expert witnesses. Most states typically require that you're working at least part time. And part time is sort of like this moving target. For the most part, what I've gathered from attorneys is that that's like 15 to 20 hours a week. And this is actually great for burnout. Is a lot of attorneys want their experts to actually have academic experience, research experience, writing experience. So they're actually really looking for that well-rounded professional who's not just working in clinical practice. Knowing this was the case, I started building up my academic work and academic affiliation work through time. I was already doing precepting work, but I got an academic appointment through 2 different PA programs. And I just published my first research article. And you don't necessarily need to get your doctorate to do this work, because you're looking to comment on the standard of care for a typical, usual practicing PA within that field. That's ultimately what it's like. So, like, you don't need to have a higher level of credentials to then complement that, but it does make you more competitive as an expert when they're looking for cases.
And I was curious, when you said that you were doing the academic work, you didn't leave like emergency medicine and go do that full time. Tell us, what kind of opportunities do schools look for? I mean, do you just lecture every once in a while? What does that look like?
My role is that I'm an adjunct. And so I actually don't lecture at the program. I serve as a PA preceptor. You can also teach. I have academic affiliations with schools, but I also teach for several different private companies as well, who basically do training for fellowships. So that's another way to sort of get like an affiliation and show that you're actively engaging with and teaching and training PAs and NPs.
And I hear it all the time that people are like, it's so limiting being a PA, because people just have that they're in this little box that I go to clinic and that's what I do. And the only other option I have is to teach at a PA program
Yes.
full time. It's like one or the other. And the more I do these interviews and hear people talk, I realize there's a million different things we can do across the whole spectrum. So I love when people share that and hopefully open the eyes of PAs to understand that there's so much available to us out there.
EAs are really, I almost want to use the word invading all different areas because we have to get our names out there. We have to show what we're capable of. And the only way to do that is through these discussions and educating PAs and sort of go find out what you're passionate about. It doesn't have to be as a medical legal, consultant. It doesn't have to be in clinical trials. It doesn't have to be in academia. You could be interested in medical affairs for a pharmaceutical company or a health tech company. There's so many different areas for which we can practice safety, quality, medical documentation, research. There's so many different areas, and we need to expand our thought process of where we can demonstrate our skills.
Yeah, and I have I have a playlist of it's all non-clinical jobs, and I have a playlist on the channel of entrepreneurial opportunities, and they're pretty wide ranging, and I love it. And so, speaking of entrepreneurship, if somebody is going to be a medical legal consultant, either as an expert witness or working with an attorney reviewing cases to see if there is a case there, either way, is it all entrepreneurial opportunities, or or can you actually be hired like as an employee if somebody is a little nervous about the whole entrepreneurial route?
Yeah, no, you don't necessarily need to be your own entrepreneur. You can be hired by a law firm. You can be hired by a governmental affairs community. You can be hired by a consulting agency. You can get that steady paycheck, steady hours, that sort of thing. Or you can be your own entrepreneur. And it can be very daunting to sort of do this type of work because it's a lot of hustling and it's kind of fun. But what I like being as an independent consultant is you make your own hours and it can be flexible. It can do it all on my own time. You have to sort of look what fits your life and
Yeah.
what fits where you are.
Then the entrepreneurial side is also great because then you start introducing all kinds of different tax benefits and things that people may not realize.
Correct.
Yeah. So entrepreneurship for some people, as we said, could be pretty scary, and they may not know how or think they have to have everything lined up. And speaking as an entrepreneur, and I'm sure you will agree with this, sometimes it's just starting messy, right? And just going for it and figuring things out along the way. So tell us a little overview of kind of how you have done this, how you have things set up, any things, tools you use.
Basic tenets of doing a case to start out with a case is doing a retainer agreement. And so that retainer agreement basically guarantees you a certain amount of hours, which is typically 3 to 4 hours to do an initial review of the case. Typically, our work is billed hourly, usually in like 15 to 20-minute increments, much like attorneys. Whatever you bill, you need to keep track of. And then you then sort of create an invoicing for that. Now,
Yeah.
invoicing can be, you can do it off of Microsoft Word. You can do it off of
Yeah.
a Google Sheet. You can do it all different ways. And this is where my VA team works out great because they just do it for me. The more and more cases I've done, the more and more I've realized I need someone to help me. When I'm working full time, I have kids, I need someone to help me. And so I hired a virtual assistant that actually deals with only expert witnesses. So they deal with physicians, MPs. They're very cost effective and they really keep me organized. And we create a sheet that has my W-9 on it, that has my CV, that has my rate schedule, and it has an agreement because you want to make sure that all the parameters are set for your case. So for example, I got a case yesterday that reached out to me and I'm in the middle of working a busy ER shift. And I'm like, all right, thank you so much for reaching out. I'm going to have my administrative team get back to you. You need to create a case log for your cases when you do medical legal work. And you need to store all the cases on a secure drive. And there's Dropbox and there's other options as well. Getting paid for this work can sometimes be frustrating. And most of the time, you get paid within a month, but it can be tough because it's not like you're getting your every 1 week or 2 week paycheck for your regular clinical job. And then beyond that, you need to make sure that you have to establish yourself as an LLC or an S corp with a pass through. It all depends on how much income you're making. Usually with this side hustle work, you can make a substantial income with this. The problem is you have to balance that with clinical work because they don't want you doing this all the time
Right.
because having to be the majority of your income because they will ask you at a deposition, they will ask you I had a trial. How much of this are you doing? Because they want to make sure that you're partial. They want to make sure that you're neutral, which is appropriate. If you're doing expert witness work and medical professional legal consulting, it's for the most part a side hustle, unless you're sort of doing it full time and then you're doing it less from an expert perspective.
Yeah, you're not testifying as much then because, well, you're in some states you can't testify at all if you're not working at least some
Correct.
clinical. So if you're doing it full time, like Susan did in the other interview, you're working mainly just with attorneys reviewing cases to let them know if there is a case there and how to proceed.
Yeah, that's a lot of hustling to do, especially as an independent contractor, and you're getting paid less to do that type of work. But it could be, if you have enough work, it could be very highly compensated more than clinical work, but it's not consistent work.
Yeah.
And then the other traditional stuff is you need to have your own bank account, credit cards. You need to document everything, mileage, everything, all your meals, all the time you spend talking to attorneys. Usually that first initial consultation, that's a free consultation because that's really how you get your work. But beyond that, you can bill for everything you do, including your expert letters, your deposition time, your discovery work, research work, chronology work, preparation for cases that are going to trial. Any time you travel, you can get paid for it. So when I'm going to trial, I will make sure everything gets paid for, including my hotel, my travel, my mileage, my meals, and then you basically get like a daily rate for that trial. Again, it pays much better than that of clinical work. People are really looking to get into this space. I've really listened to that and really felt like it's a great opportunity to create a conference for PA entrepreneurs. Basically, we want to create an environment where people can learn about the different opportunities and how to go about getting into those opportunities with subject matter experts in the field, such as what you're doing things such as clinical trials, medical professional legal consultant, working for pharmaceutical companies as speakers. Do you want to become your own practice owner? How do you go about that? What are the laws within your state? And the hope is that we can provide that training for people. And we're going to hopefully have this conference materialize at some point in the fall.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. And you said this is going to be a virtual conference, correct?
Yeah, the plan is to make this a virtual conference to start. So follow me on LinkedIn to hear about this.
And if I'm going to be involved too, I'm going to be promoting it on my networks as well. So if you're subscribed and follow me as well, you should be able to find out when this is going to be happening. People always want to know, like, well, how much are we talking? And of course, it's always going to be variable. But can you give people kind of ideas of what kind of payments are out there?
So first of all, in order to get into this type of work, I really think you need at least 5 to 6 years of experience within a specific specialty. So if you've been doing family medicine for 5 to 6 years, I think you can appropriately opine on a case. So when you first getting started, you really want to look at the lower end of that scale, and I think that lower end is going to be probably around that 175, $200 an hour range. And again, you have to look into this in perspective, right? There's no taxes being taken out because it's 1099 work. You have to pay your overheads and all these different types of things. So, these are the rates that you see when you start out, and then it can go upwards from there. Typically, some of the physicians are making $500-$600 an hour when it comes to their work. Some are even charging more. And then you're going to have increased pay when it comes to deposition work because it essentially will erase your whole clinical day, a day that you can't work. So people get appropriately compensated for that. So that range can be several thousands of dollars for you doing that day. You will see definitely PAs that are approaching some high compensation for doing a trial. Now, trials are not common, right? Less than 10% of cases go to trial. So you just have to take that into perspective. Much of the work that we do is affidavit of merit work, causation analysis work, chronology work, research work, initial case review work. But it's fun work. I think the in-house work is going to be it's going to be at a lower rate. You can sometimes see that rate anywhere between like 125, 150 an hour. I've seen rates even higher than that, and upwards like 250, 275 an hour. $300 an hour, similar to that of an attorney, right? Because your advanced degree is similar to an attorney's. I've gone to school for 8 years and done additional training. An attorney has gone to school for less than that, and they're making that an hour. So you are a well-educated professional that can highly contribute to a case. So your salary should reflect that.
As a PA or an NP, when you're working on a case with an attorney, are they always or only cases that are involving PAs and NPs? Or as a PA or an NP, do you work on cases that involve MDs, where the MD is the defendant.
From an expert standpoint, you really should only be opining on your own profession. A similar practicing provider with those credentials within that environment. Now, when you're doing medical professional legal consulting work or in-house work, you may review a case for merit, and that merit review work, you can review it if it's an MD case or if it's a MP case. But from an expert perspective for depositions and trials, et cetera, most states, the overwhelming majority of states, really require a provider within that profession.
Like looking at PAs, do you know roughly how many malpractice cases come around annually? I don't know if you have those numbers at
Yeah, I
all.
do have those numbers.
Right.
So the most recent numbers that I had from the National Practitioner Data Bank, that really has shown that around 2.5% of all malpractice cases are PAs. We're seeing that even despite the increase in autonomy, that over the last 5, 6, 10 years for MPs and PAs, the malpractice rates remain flat. And I think that's because of the practice environments for the most part we are in. Ultimately, you can draw a conclusion that we're providing quality of care.
So having said that, with the limited number of PA malpractice cases that come about, 2% sounds so low. I don't know how many the total, number is, that 2% of that number. Are there enough cases where if people are looking to get into this, they may be thinking, well, there's not going to be any work for me to do. Do you have any thoughts on that?
There is enough work. Now, is there enough work for people who are listening to this podcast and everybody flocking to this type of work? No, there's not. And there's not that case for even physicians with that many cases as well, right?
Yeah.
But with the increasing number of PAs that are in practice now, with the increasing autonomy, I think you're going to see, especially coming out of COVID, I think there's going to be a rise in cases probably. Now, will those cases go to trial? I can't really say that, but I think there's going to be a rise in cases, and I think there'll be increased opportunity there. But I think you're going to see that number probably around maybe 3.5%, probably at the most. But you have to remember, there's other work to do as well, right? There's work beyond an expert. There's in-house work. There's medical affairs work. There's risk management work and quality work, and you can do this on the side in addition to that, right? So I think that there's enough work all within safety and quality and risk mitigation work that you become educated in this space on, that we should see more PAs in it. When I say PAs, I really mean PAs
Right.
and MPs.
Right, yeah. And so if people like don't even know how they would find those other jobs, how do people find that information out?
I think that's a great question. And I think looking in your communities, looking on social media, I think are great resources. I agree. There's not a lot of great discussions about what are the possibilities that we can do with this knowledge base. How can we apply it? And certainly within the course I just took, people are going different pathways with that. They're not just going in as an expert witness. They're not just going as in-house work. They're going in all different directions. We have our own social media: Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook page. I will give you some Facebook resources for people to belong to. But yeah, there's not a ton of information out there solely about this that I've seen.
Yeah.
But I would encourage everyone who has interests in risk
Yeah.
mitigation, in healthcare law, to really think about sort of where you see yourself fitting, and put your name out there, build up your CV, and apply to your healthcare system in quality and safety. I think this is also great training for administrative roles, because there's so much when it comes to peer review within hospital systems, which totally applies to what we do in managing PAs and MPs. If you're an executive director of APCs, this all applies.
I think the whole message just has to be that people need to get from this is that if you have an interest in the legal side of medicine, that there are opportunities out there that are going to continue to grow. It's going to take you digging a little bit and being a little bit of a bulldog about finding those opportunities until it becomes a more commonplace thing. But if you see a nurse doing it on the medical legal side, then a PA can do it most likely, as far as, the opportunities being there. So don't give up. Again, I'll put all those links down below in the show notes so people can have whatever resources are available.
I love what you said. Be a bulldog, be bold, show that we can do the job and we can do it better, be competitive in this space. The numbers are reflecting a huge growth in MPs and PAs. And these roles need to be filled by people in the space that are doing the work. And that work is not just being done by nurses. And I love nurses. I respect nurses. They are incredible members of the team. I just think that we can work with them. Put yourself out there, create some opportunities for yourself, get on faculty with some PANP programs, really look at your CV and look at how you can be more competitive, and reach out to people who are doing the work and that are already doing it, and see how you can get into it.
If you want to know what the different options are for PA or NP entrepreneurs, check out this playlist here. Thank you for joining me. And as always, take care, stay sane, and I'll see you next time on the Medicine Couch. Bye.